We continue our reading of Lest We Forget, a daily devotional by author George R. Knight. Today's reading, December 15, Unparalleled Mission Growth, 1900 to 1950, Part 2. It had been planted on good soil by abundant waters, that it might produce branches and bear fruit and become a noble vine. Ezekiel 17, verse 8. By 1900, rapid growth had become the Adventist way. Its roots had been set, its branches had been established, and it began to develop abundant fruit around the world. In 1890, Adventism had 255 evangelistic workers and 27,031 members in North America, and 5 workers and 2,680 members outside. But by 1950, the North American statistics show 2,326 evangelistic workers and 66,294 members, while the non-North American membership stood at 38,000, served by 2,020 workers. 2 decades later, the numbers were 2,509 workers and 120,560 members in North America, and 8,479 workers and 190,693 members overseas. And by 1950, the number of evangelistic workers in North America stood at 5,588, and the membership at 250,939. The non-North American numbers were 12,371 and 505,773. Those rather startling figures indicate not only rapid growth, but a shift in the proportion of Adventists outside of North America. During the mid-1920s, the denomination passed the point where it had more members outside the continent of its birth than it did within. Thus, the church not only preached worldwide, but was beginning to become internationalized, a process still underway. Some of the implications of internationalization were already becoming evident by 1900. One was an expansion of home bases for the sending of foreign missionaries. While the practice had begun during the 19th century, Daniels conscientiously sought to develop Adventism further in such nations as Germany, England, and Australia, in order to make them stronger home bases for additional expansion. The earlier decades of the 20th century witnessed the German church under the leadership of L.R. Conradi pioneer Adventism in the Middle East and East Africa. Australian missionaries, meanwhile, rapidly spread the message throughout much of the South Pacific. And British Adventism, with its nation global empire and strongly developed missionary tradition, rapidly moved to plant Adventism in many parts of the world. As the century progressed, more and more missions in both developed and underdeveloped nations became self-sustaining conferences that could function as home bases for additional mission outreach. Step by step, God was still leading His people. This concludes our reading today of Lest We Forget.